Howdy! In this mini lecture we will discuss irrigation and pests. The student learning objectives of this mini lecture are describe techniques for watering and fertilizing crops and offer more sustainable alternatives, and discuss how pesticides are used for pest control, the consequences of pesticides, and evaluate the alternatives. Agriculture, whether it be traditional or industrial, has always required supplemental provision of water and nutrients to soils and crops. While industrial agriculture has allowed us to grow enough food to feed 7 billion people, the practices which have enabled this feat have caused soil degradation, land degradation, and water quality and quantity problems. Irrigation is artificially providing water to support the growth of food or fiber crops and is one way that unproductive regions can become productive cropland. Crops vary in the amount of water they require. For example, rice and cotton are water-intensive crops, whereas beans and wheat require far less water. Traditional irrigation methods such as flood and furrow, image A in this slide, and sprinkler irrigation, which includes center pivot irrigation, result in a lot of water being lost due to evaporation. It's important to note that too much water can actually be harmful to both plants and soil. Waterlogging is when plants are overwatered, which causes the soil to be saturated and the water table to rise, consequently suffocating the plant roots. Another problem soils face with irrigation is salinization. Salinization is a buildup of salts on the surface of soil due to evaporation of water from the A horizon and the upward movement of water and salts from lower soil layers. Salinization leaves the surface of the soil white with salts and is especially problematic in dryland areas. Both waterlogging and salinization are easier to prevent than to remediate, so it's best to carefully calculate the amount of irrigation water that is needed for a particular crop in a specific area. 70% of all fresh water people withdraw from streams, creeks, lakes, and aquifers is used for irrigation. Since only 2.5% of the water on Earth is fresh water, it is imperative that we develop more water-efficient ways to grow crops. There are two methods which have been proven to reduce water inputs in agriculture. The first is to grow crops in the climates they are specifically adapted to. For example, rice is a very water-intensive crop and has been grown in arid regions for a long time. If this crop were only grown in a very moist climates that received a great deal of rainfall, this would save a substantial amount of water. By selecting crops that are better suited to the environment they will grow in, we can reduce the amount of water used for irrigation, while also allowing more arid areas to remain agriculturally productive. Another sustainable approach to irrigation is drip irrigation. This method of irrigation uses hoses to drip water directly onto the soil at the base of the plant. While conventional irrigation methods only allow 43% of the water to reach the plant, drip irrigation allows 90% of the water to reach the plant. The three nutrients that are essential for plant growth are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. As plants grow, they withdraw these nutrients from the soil, and as discussed before, nutrients can leach from the E horizon to the B horizon. Without sufficient nutrients, plant yields decline. Fertilizer, either organic or inorganic, is used to overcome this problem and enhance the nutrient content of soil. Inorganic fertilizers are fertilizers made from synthetically generated nutrients or mined nutrients. The Haber-Bosch process, invented in 1910 by Fritz Haber and Carl Bosch, allowed us to artificially fix nitrogen, consequently allowing us to effectively double the rate of nitrogen fixation on Earth and overwhelmingly nature's denitrification capacity. While inorganic fertilizers have allowed us to produce more food for our growing population, these fertilizers cause many environmental problems, including eutrophication, groundwater contamination, and human health problems such as cancer and blue baby syndrome. Organic fertilizers are natural products made from the decaying of organisms or their waste products. Manure, crop residues, and fresh vegetation are all considered organic fertilizers. Compost, which is often used as an organic fertilizer, is a mixture of organic matter such as food waste and crop waste. Many people, and now some large entities such as universities and cities, maintain compost piles as a natural way of reducing landfill waste, while also developing an environmentally friendly product to boost soil fertility. Modern industrial agriculture has modified the natural ecosystem to such a degree that natural mechanisms for controlling pests are no longer effective for managing insects and other harmful organisms that attack crops. In order to continue to provide food on the industrial scale, farmers have turned to chemicals to control pests and weeds. There are now thousands of chemicals used to kill insects, harmful plants, rodents, fungi, and microorganisms. These are called insecticides, herbicides, rodenticides, fungicides, and bactericides, respectively. Although it is often assumed that the term pesticide only refers to chemicals that kill insects, you should know that all chemicals designed to prevent, destroy, mitigate, or otherwise inhibit organisms from interacting with a target crop or plant are considered pesticides. Under the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, the Environmental Protection Agency is responsible for regulating all pesticides in the U.S. In the U.S. alone, over 1 billion pounds of pesticides are used each year. Approximately 5.6 billion pounds are used worldwide. While these compounds enable large-scale production of food and fiber crops, there are many risks associated with pesticides. To begin, pesticides are designed to be biologically active and to harm, kill, or deter organisms. As such, there are unintended consequences of pesticides. Many developing countries do not have farmer protection programs, and even in countries that do have these programs, agricultural workers are exposed to these harmful chemicals and can have health problems. It is estimated that 25 million agricultural workers worldwide experience an unintentional poisoning, fatal or otherwise, each year due to exposure to these chemicals. A study conducted in 2001 found that in the U.S., 16% of all pesticide users had at least one pesticide poisoning or had been exposed to an exceptionally high level of pesticide during their lifetime. Pesticides can also harm what are referred to as non-target organisms, or organisms that the pesticide wasn't intended to affect. For example, some scientists suspect that the increased use of pesticides is to blame for colony collapse disorder, which is the large-scale loss of bee colonies in several nations. Finally, depending on the concentration of the pesticide, the type of pesticide, individual sensitivities, and several other factors, pesticides cause detrimental health effects to human consumers of products treated with the compounds. One inherent problem with pesticides is that over time, pests become resistant to the effects of chemicals used to control them. Individual pests exposed to the pesticide, but who survive, pass down their genes, which select for pesticide resistance, to their offspring. As the population of resistant pests increases, the pesticide loses its effectiveness. This is often referred to as the pesticide treadmill. Chemists will increase the toxicity of the pesticide to compete with the resistance of the evolved pests, and the cycle will continue. Some species of insects have even evolved resistance to multiple chemicals. In this way, we find ourselves caught in a vicious and risky arms race that is essentially a positive feedback loop. That concludes the mini lecture on irrigation techniques and pests. Please review the weekly outline and complete the activities for this week per the schedule set forth in the outline. Thanks and giggle!